sort of practical politician that we've ever had in my life.
You're like the only person that thinks that.
Oh, no. If you look at the issues,
that he's the most common sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You look at the border. You look at all of those issues. You look at the issue of abortion that has gotten him into trouble.
Okay.
All of those things.
He said, it's up to the states. I did this. There are 6-week abortion bans even in his own state.
But remember, he's not in trouble with Democrats. He's in trouble with evangelical Republicans, but he's still standing for a more practical stance.
There are also states, as our democracies, our laboratory of democracies. There are also states that go through the due date.
And J.D. Vance doesn't want you to even be able to go to another
I don't understand why sending abortion back to the states is somehow worse than having the Supreme Court or Roe v. Wade.
Jessica Tarlov, a well-known Democratic commentator, just had a heated on-air clash over Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and the current state of the Democratic Party, leading to a moment no one expected. During a fiery debate with Greg Gutfeld and other panelists, tensions flared as the conversation turned to crime, border security, and media bias. Was this a brutal reality check for Tarlov, or just another case of political theatrics? Stick around, we're breaking down exactly what happened, why she walked off, and what it all means.
Were you surprised at all that this coalesced together as quickly as possible around the vice president? Do you think it would have been beneficial? As Congressman Clyburn had said, let's let them fight it out. He was supporting her, but he said it's actually good for testing her and everybody else who might be her number 2 through this process.
I certainly think it would have made great programming and that people would have liked to have seen it. But the truth of the matter is we don't have much time. And this was Joe Biden's decision. And the delegates, a lot of them have spoken out about this. They voted for, or they're representing Joe Biden's wishes. And he is part of the Biden-Harris administration. And in that sense, it makes sense that this was her nomination. So we have 3.5 weeks until the DNC. We have 102 days until the election. I'm fine with this. She represents a lot of where the parties, and not the Kamala Harris of 2020, but the Kamala Harris of today. And that is the maneuver that she's going to have to make. And I think that she has a lot to say. I mean, if you watch the whole video, for instance, when she was talking about defunding the police, the point she was making is really salient. She was talking about what a safe neighborhood looks like. And it's not crawling with cops, right? It has great schools. It has thriving small businesses. It has really high home ownership, which has been a priority of the Biden-Harris administration to make sure that people can get on the property.
Jessica Tarlov's on-air reaction during a heated debate serves as a stark reminder of how intense political discourse has become, especially on networks like Fox News, where ideological clashes are often the main draw. Her visible frustration, whether sincere or heightened for dramatic effect, highlights the broader difficulties faced by Democratic voices on conservative platforms. Some viewers may see her reaction as a sign of weakness or an inability to defend her views, while others might view it as a natural response to an environment where dissenting opinions often face aggressive opposition. The real question is, was this a genuine moment of exasperation, or a calculated move designed to make headlines? Either way, moments like these continue to fuel the culture war, keeping audiences engaged and deepening political polarization. The debate surrounding Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's decision to step aside underscores growing tensions within the Democratic Party. Speculation that Biden was pressured to withdraw points to broader concerns that internal party dynamics may have played a decisive role in reshaping the 2024 race. While there's no concrete evidence of coercion, political maneuvering is always at play in high-stakes elections. As Biden's vice president, Harris was the obvious choice to carry the torch of continuity, but whether she is the best candidate to unify the party and persuade undecided voters remains an open question. Critics point to her low approval ratings as a major obstacle, while supporters argue that she has matured into a stronger, more capable leader. As the election approaches, Harris's success will depend on how effectively she addresses past criticisms and persuades the electorate that she is ready to lead the country forward.
I mean, the proof is in the pudding, as it were, of what the Biden-Harris administration did it. The most delicious flavor of it at all. They have invested more in law enforcement than any other administration in history. Donald Trump actually proposed a 58% cut to the community policing program. They put 3,700 police officers on the street through that program. Another 100,000 that came in through the Safer America plan. The American Rescue Plan had $15 billion in it for crime and policing to make sure that we have safer communities. It's a strong record to run on. The border right now, we were talking about this. Jennifer Griffin was tweeting about the two Sinaloa cartel bosses that were apprehended. She said that it was like catching bin Laden when it comes to the war against fentanyl. That happened under the Biden-Harris administration. Encounters at the border are down 55% since the executive order. These are all things
out of hitting numbers that had wildly spiked after the Trump administration, not back down to those numbers.
I understand that, and you obviously have to acknowledge that there were huge spikes, but it doesn't mean that she's the same person that you saw in 2020. She oversaw the implementation of the policies that have led to all of these.
Crime and policing remain central issues in the national conversation, frequently serving as key talking points for both political parties. The Biden administration has invested significantly in law enforcement initiatives, but conservative critics argue that the reality on the ground, particularly in major cities, tells a different story. With crime rates remaining a persistent concern, while it's easy to accuse Democrats of being out of touch on public safety, the issue is far more nuanced, shaped by economic conditions, local policies, and societal challenges that extend beyond federal reach. Nevertheless, political opponents often capitalize on public perception, highlighting high-profile crimes to frame a narrative of widespread lawlessness. At its core, the debate centers on whether the administration's approach is effectively addressing public safety or merely reallocating resources without producing tangible results. Border security is similarly politically charged, with both parties struggling to offer sustainable, long-term solutions. Although the Biden administration has reinstated certain Trump-era immigration policies, conservatives dismiss these actions as performative gestures aimed at courting moderate voters. Ahead of the election, however, viewing every policy shift as purely political fails to account for the complexity of governing, which often demands pragmatic adjustments. The ongoing border crisis is driven by economic instability in Central and South America, global migration trends, and systemic flaws in the U.S. immigration system, challenges that neither Democrats nor Republicans have fully resolved. Rather than resorting to partisan blame, meaningful progress will require bipartisan cooperation and structural reform, an increasingly unlikely prospect in today's deeply divided political climate.
All that stuff would be suppressed like Hunter's laptop story. It would be buried like Jimmy Hoffa. But now it's like Twitter or X has turned everybody into their own debunkers. And so I wonder how the legacy media can still maintain this gaslighting role if the public can so quickly and easily call them out on it. And it's because they just assume their allies are there for them and they can continue doing this. I mean, it is comedy to watch them do this, and they're still doing it. But I think to back to your point about the honeymoon's among the media. Mm-hmm. Right. It's not, there's no honeymoon for people who are going to the grocery store and seeing the prices, or dealing with crime in their cities, or their lack of police.
Accusations of media manipulation and gaslighting have become commonplace in today's political discourse, with both sides of the aisle claiming that mainstream outlets distort reality to fit their agendas. While media bias, whether conservative or liberal, is undeniable, dismissing all journalism as dishonest poses a serious threat to public trust in the press. The real challenge lies in distinguishing credible reporting from opinion-driven content designed to provoke outrage or reinforce ideological beliefs. The rise of social media has further complicated this landscape, empowering individuals to act as their own fact-checkers while simultaneously fueling the rapid spread of misinformation. In an era where perception often outweighs reality, media consumers must navigate a fragmented and often chaotic information ecosystem, balancing healthy skepticism with a commitment to evidence-based reasoning. As media narratives continue to shape public discourse, their actual influence on voter behavior remains a subject of debate, while traditional outlets still wield considerable power. The rise of independent news platforms, podcasts, and social media has diversified how people access and engage with information. This shift has broadened perspectives but also made it easier for disinformation to flourish. The core issue isn't just media bias, it's the growing difficulty in separating fact from manipulation. With the 2024 election on the horizon, voters' ability to critically evaluate information will be crucial in determining electoral outcomes. Rather than blindly aligning with a single media narrative, individuals must engage in deeper scrutiny, questioning not only the sources they trust, but also their own cognitive biases.
The other thing that gets glossed over by the media is the fact that not only is Kamala Harris the most radically left-wing politician who's ever run for president, but she's running against the least ideological, least partisan, most common sense sort of practical politician that we've ever had in
You
my
know,
life.
you're like the only person that thinks that.
Oh, no. If you look at the
That
issues,
that he's the most common sense
Oh, yeah,
person.
absolutely. You look at the border. You look at all of those issues. You look at the issue of abortion that has gotten him into trouble.
Okay.
All of those things.
He said, it's up to the states. I did this. There are 6-week abortion bans,
that got
even
him
in his
trouble
own
with
state.
own
but
party.
remember, there are also-
he's not in trouble with Democrats. He's in trouble with evangelical Republicans,
him
but he's
to be
still
tougher.
standing for a more practical stance.
There
on
are also
abortion.
states, as our democracies, our laboratory of democracies. There are also states that go through the due
And
date.
JD Vance doesn't want you to even be able to go to
Well,
another
I don't understand
state
why sending abortion
Okay.
back to the states is somehow worse than having the Supreme Court or Roe v. Wade. You're getting it closer to the community. Isn't that what it's called?
Kamala Harris's political stance has long been a subject of intense scrutiny, with critics often labeling her as one of the most liberal politicians in the country. This perception largely stems from her Senate record, where she supported progressive policies on healthcare, criminal justice reform, and climate change. However, since becoming vice president, Harris has adopted a more moderate approach, aligning herself closely with the broader Democratic agenda rather than championing far-left initiatives. While branding her as an extreme liberal may be an effective political tactic for her opponents, it oversimplifies the evolution of her political positioning, especially now, as she emerges as the likely Democratic nominee. Her key challenge will be balancing progressive expectations with the need to win over moderate and independent voters, particularly in crucial swing states. At the same time, the debate over censorship and election interference has become central to the political discourse. Both sides accuse tech companies of manipulating information. Conservatives claim platforms like Google, Facebook, and Twitter suppress right-leaning content, while liberals argue for stronger regulation to curb misinformation and protect democratic integrity. In reality, big tech firms face immense pressure from both political and financial interests, making their content moderation policies highly contentious. While concerns about censorship are valid, sweeping allegations of election interference must be grounded in verifiable evidence, not speculation. As social media continues to dominate political communication, the critical question isn't just whether tech companies are silencing certain voices, but how they can responsibly balance free speech with the need to prevent the spread of misinformation without becoming the ultimate arbiters of truth. What do you think about today's video? Let us know in the comments, and